City of Stevens Point Finance Committee meeting, recorded November 9, 2020.
Hello, everyone, and we'll give everyone just a moment to readjust, including myself. Excuse me. Excuse me, I'm sorry. All right, it is 6:48, and we'll call the Finance Committee meeting of the City of Stevens Point to order on November 9th, 2020. And the first item on the agenda is roll call.
All right, so I'll call the roll. I know that Alder Dalton has had issues with sound, so Alder Dalton,
I'm here now.
Oh, you are? Okay, perfect. All right, so we've got Alder Dalton. Johnson?
I am here.
Morrow?
Here.
Shore?
Here.
And Slowinski?
Here.
All right. 5 present.
All right, we're all here. Let's get rolling. Item 2 on the agenda is consideration of the 2021 operating budget, including a recommendation of the 2021 property tax levy to Common Council. This is also a time where the public, if they so wish, may contribute and offer their input onto the budget. And so I'm going to open up the floor first to members of the committee if they have anything that they wish to say, comment, or make suggestions, or any amendments to the budget as it was presented. All right, hearing none, I will take members of the public, ma'am, and after I've had counsel. All right, members of council, anyone else who wishes to comment, ask questions, make amendments to the budget as it was presented, and the recommendation, excuse me, for the levy. All right. Now I'd be happy to accept inquiries or questions or comments from the public. Ms. Meyer, I will remind members of the public that I will have a timer going. You'll have 3 minutes, at which time I will ask you to finish up your comments. If someone else has indicated what you wish to say, just say, so-and-so has already said my comments and I wish to endorse those or something similar, in the interest of time. And so since I saw no one else at this time with a hand raised except Ms. Meyer, please go ahead. Unmute yourself, ma'am.
Okay. I didn't have time to time this, but I don't think it's much over 3 minutes. I'll read it real fast. Mary Meyer, 1450 Water Street, Stevens Point. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight, and thank you for carefully considering, as you are now, how the city might help Edgewater seniors to be able to afford a home. First, please do whatever is necessary to keep Edgewater Manor affordable housing for seniors. With as many people out of work due to COVID-19 as there are, this might be a good time to find a long-term solution to Edgewater's facade issue, a solution that Edgewater could pay for with the
just a quick question. Is this related to the budget or to the next agenda item?
I'm sorry, the Edgewater agenda item.
Okay.
Should I continue on?
Why don't you wait until we're actually on that agenda item?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. Thank you. Please wait. Anyone else from the public who wishes to comment, ask questions, ask for clarifications on the 2021 budget and the recommendation on the levy? I've waited the 5 or 6 seconds like I like to do. And for members of the public, we actually saw this budget several weeks ago. I asked that it be brought back for this committee meeting. I appreciate that we did that. It gave us a little bit more time. I had 1 or 2 questions, which I asked the comptroller treasurer already. We had a conversation. I had no additional questions, so I would entertain a motion. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. To entertain a motion related to the 2021 budget and the suggestion for the levy.
This is Alder Morrow. I move to approve the 2021 operating budget as well as the 2021 tax levy.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Alder Dalton, I would second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion at all on the motion? Hearing none. Committee members, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed would be no. Excellent. Motion carries. It will be recommended to council the 2021 budget as presented, along with the levy recommendation. All right, now, item 3, evaluation of options and developing a long-term strategy for Edgewater Manor. I first want to thank Comptroller Treasurer Laddick and Director Kanowski. They took time out of their busy schedules. We met twice this last week to go over this, kind of dissect everything that's happened in the last several years. And Comptroller Treasurer Laddick put together a very nice memo kind of recapping everything. And I'll start there. Again, I want to thank them for taking the time for really to start parsing out what this is. The direction I gave both of those individuals was to, first, number one, look at that proposal back from 2018, I believe it was, and see if that costing was still relevant, and that was Director Kanowski's task, and I believe he's still working on that. And then for Comptroller Treasurer Laddick is, if the decision is looking at some other option for the individuals living in Edgewater, how do we best make them whole and make sure that they have affordable housing, not only today, but well into the future, so that they can have comfortable retirement days, and we have not unduly harmed them. So I would then turn it over to our Comptroller Treasurer Laddick and let it go from there.
Sure, thank you. So the memo was included in the packet. As you might remember, 2 years ago in 2018, we did bid out some repairs to Edgewater Manor, the largest of which is replacing the facade, which is in need of repair. And at that time, the bids did come in quite a bit higher than expected. The bid was $4,181,000. So 2 years ago, we did have the discussion as far as, if we move forward, what's going to be the impact on the rents at Edgewater Manor. And ultimately, we decided to reject the bid, go with a temporary repair, which we were told would get us about 4 to 5 years. So we're about 2 years into that. And, realistically, we could have another 2 years to go. But it's important that we're bringing this back now, because whatever solution we would decide to go with, whether that's still repairing it, whether that's looking at other options or doing some kind of a transition, whatever we do is going to take some time to put together, to develop, and to implement. So we do need to bring this back and move it toward some kind of a final resolution, because the residents also need some direction. And if we're going to make a change, the residents are going to need time to make those adjustments And one of the reasons why this is relevant now is that with the Berkshire opening up across the street, that could potentially be another option if we don't intend to keep Edgewater Manor open long term. And they plan to start taking applications later this month. So it would be good if we can provide some kind of direction so that people can make plans. And basically, there are really two major options here. One is, to go ahead and make the repairs, rebid the project. We don't have any reason to believe that the bids will come back lower than they did before, just based on where we're at with construction and construction costs. So if we take the make the repairs option, we are looking at an increase in the rent of at least $233 a month in order to service the debt service to cover those repairs. So that would bring the rent from $545 a month plus cable to $778 a month plus cable. So that is, a somewhat significant increase. And then the other item to really note there is we don't know what other unexpected challenges you could run into in a construction process. So, certainly the possibility for change orders for other things coming up would definitely be a potential. So that's something that we would have to be prepared for as well. And then the other option, if we decide that we don't want to go forward with the repairs, is to transition toward a closure of the building, to let the residents know that we don't intend to make those long-term repairs, which would really preclude us from keeping the building open long-term. And then if we take that option, there is a balance in the Edgewater Fund of a little bit over $1 million. So then we could look at a grant program to help cover the increased costs as far as a rental increase for other housing options. And then as far as structuring that grant, a common standard for housing affordability is that it should cost no more than 30% of someone's income so that they have enough money for other expenses. So if we're designing a grant program, that's sort of a big, goal is to get as close to that as possible to keep the housing options affordable. So those are more or less the two options. We can continue to operate under the temporary repair for up to 2 years. But of course, like I said, we certainly don't want to find ourselves in a position where 2 years have elapsed and we haven't done anything and we haven't prepared anything and we haven't figured out a long-term direction. And now you might have a more chaotic situation.
Thank you, Comptroller Treasurer Laddick. I appreciate that. Director Karnowski, did you have anything to add at this point?
No, not in general. I would generally state that construction costs right now, because of the pandemic, tariffs, issues with importing from Canada, for example, on lumber, we are seeing building construction costs up roughly 20%. As a good example, Northside Yard, which broke ground recently, they went from a partial wood structure to a full steel structure because it was cheaper for them to construct with steel as opposed to wood because of COVID. So we do know that there are some serious building costs, and the cost to build has gone up significantly. So I do not expect the 4.1, roughly 4.2 million price tag to renovate the building to be any lower. In fact, I would expect it to be increased. As the comptroller mentioned earlier, now is the time for us to start exploring options moving forward. The facade repair that was done in 2018 is halfway through its expected life cycle. And we don't want to be in a state of crisis in 2 years when that's coming up on the end of its life cycle. We've got to make some decisions. We want to start having some direction, some decision making now, so that we know what to do, and so that, you know, if we choose to draw down the Edgewater residents and encourage them to find housing elsewhere, that they have plenty of time to do so, that we're not in a pinch. It's just good. It's a good time to review this, a good time to provide some direction, and especially with the Berkshire project across the street under construction, something to take into consideration as well. So outside of that, I'm more than happy to answer any other questions. Otherwise, like I said, Comptroller Laddick and I and President Johnson have been working very diligently the last few weeks on this and exploring all of our options moving forward.
And Director Kronowski, the Berkshire property, they are beginning to accept inquiries already? Well,
correct. So through some conversations about 2 weeks ago, there's 88 units in the Berkshire Senior Housing Project. They have, a few weeks ago, 102 folks on their waiting list. They are starting to accept applications formally and starting to get folks lined up into the rooms. And through those conversations, we've asked that if there's an opportunity for them to reach out to Edgewater residents, that they do so. That's another reason why we're bringing this up now, is they need to start filling their building. And if we can provide an incentive to Edgewater residents to relocate now to Berkshire, for example, we thought that this was a good time to bring this back up.
all right. Again, one of the things, kind of the framework, as I talked with Comptroller Treasurer and the Director, is number one, what are our options in trying to find other housing? Should the option be to close Edgewater, stop accepting any new applicants as of, let's say, January 1st, and we start that transition? How do we use that, the Edgewater Fund, to help make these folks whole, so they are not unduly burdened? Whether that's in the new Berkshire property, which I see today, they're really going hot and heavy on getting windows in. So it's still blue. So I can't wait for it to not be blue. Or some other option. There are a lot of other senior living opportunities in this area. Actually, there's an abundance of them. And that may be more advantageous for some of them, or even in the community, there are rentals. But we want to make sure that people are not, if the decision is to move beyond Edgewater, that for the remainder of their years, they are able to enjoy a subsidy from the Edgewater Fund, which they help to build through their rents. And so that was kind of the discussion, the framework. We came to no conclusions past that. And I will now leave it up to, or open it up to the committee for discussion.
Well, this is Alder Slowinski. I'm sorry, Corey, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I guess, just reviewing the memo and what was put together here. I hate to say it, but I really think that this Edgewater building is slipping and, beyond help, especially with the amount of money it's going to cost to fix it in this day and age. Without hearing, I'd like to hear from Ms. Myers, but my first impression here is I would like to lean towards the idea of, creating incentives for these residents in Edgewater to, start looking ahead to maybe moving into a different location across the street or somewhere else within the community. So I guess that's just my first thoughts. Again, I'd like to hear from Ms. Myers. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Slowinski. We'll hear from members of the public after the committee and after the council members. So other members of the committee.
Alder Dalton, I would like to speak.
Certainly.
I appreciate this coming forward because I've brought this up in the past that a long-term strategy is necessary, and since I have been elected to office, the residents have been talking to me about the long-term plan and the confusion of leadership with the building. So a couple of comments, because the options really presented to us are either make the repairs or close the building. I guess my perspective from the bid that was received in 2018 was that it was a bit ludicrous. I'm a member owner of a construction company. I put together bids as a part of that work, and even specific line items in that where I remember the installation of doors throughout the building was expected to be over $1,500 a door. And I specifically know from a contractor that we have worked with in our company that he would be able to install them at under $300 a door. And that really, those are where things really start to add up. So while I appreciate that we did only get one bid, there are kind of tumultuous materials costs at this point in time. I think that there is opportunity to receive a more responsible bid that does not put a burden on the residents there. But whether or not we decide to make the repairs, there's still the ongoing question of whether the city should maintain ownership and management. And I think my experience in the past 2 years has been that the city has not really been that responsible of a landlord. We've been able to deal with management and working with Candlewood, but even situations like having a generator go down that took a couple of months to be replaced is things that perhaps it's just better that the city is not in the business of managing public housing. And so I think the main point I'd like to make about if we decide to move towards closure of the building is that I do think it's very important that what happens next to the property, and that if we could do something like make the repairs and then have it be an easier sell to perhaps a different company that or private manager that would like to maintain it as affordable housing. And I think that is perhaps the best option and definitely a need in our housing spectrum, because just because the Berkshire are going up does not mean that they're, as we've heard, they already have a long list of inquiries, and this affordable housing is very needed in this county, in this area. And the idea of a grant program is interesting, and I think there's just some nuances with it that my understanding of Section 8 housing vouchers is that those individuals are not able to receive any other government grants or subsidies alongside that. And so while many of these residents are in Section 8 and receiving those vouchers, they might not actually be eligible to receive some other funding from this. And so closing and attempting to make them whole might not actually work out. And I think it's important to point out that the Berkshire has limited units set aside for many of the individuals that would be that are at Edgewater, and the ones that are set aside, they are requiring that they are disabled or veterans. And unfortunately, there are many people who are also qualify as low income that are not disabled and veterans. And so us closing the building does have substantial impact because there's not an endless amount of housing available for these people.
Thank you, Alder Dalton. Before I go to the other members of the committee, Corey, before Alder Slawinski spoke, you were going to say something. I didn't know if it's relevant now.
No, I was just going to point out that Alder Dalton had raised her hand. But
oh, thank you. Yeah, keep me aware because I, have a hard time with the Brady Bunch boxes. I have a question for Alder or Director Kowalski, but I'll wait until after Alder. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also interested in what Mary Meyer has to say, and also in the the responses to the questions that were just raised. On the issue of cost, so even if the bid that we saw was somewhat inflated, the distance to or the gap between that price and what we had been talking about, relative to the fund that's been built up from the residents, that gap is so wide, and that market is so brutal, as we're seeing even worse in street construction, that seeing this opportunity of housing coming online here at the same time, and with this idea of um, using the fund to assist with moving, strikes me as a real opportunity. I have all throughout taken very seriously our responsibility to the residents, but this does seem like a really opportune moment. And while I have always taken seriously the city's responsibility to the current residents, I never did consider, personally anyway, that also meant preserving this building for this purpose for succeeding generations of residents. So all of which is why I also lean towards not making the repairs, using the funds to help residents make plans. And obviously, I agree with everyone else. Just as it was important for us, years back, to signal our intentions to keep Edgewater open. This does seem like the right time to likewise give that heads up and time in terms of kind of getting out of Edgewater. So that's how I'm looking at it. But like I say, I'm interested in some of the issues that have come up. Thanks.
Thank you. Alder Morrow. Oh, there you are.
Yes.
I lost you for a moment. Sorry about that. Your
like
shirt's nearly the same color of the leaves in your background. So
thank you very much. I'd like to echo what Alder Dalton said. I mean, $1,500 to hang a door seems a little bit a lot, and even with all the inflation and costs and so on, to see where it ends up going. And it's nice that we can look for a plan B if things don't work out. I know we've been wrestling with this for years since I've been on this. I mean, since I have also been here as well. And Edgewater is, Edgewater is very important. And for years, the city didn't do what it needed to end up doing. I think Candlewood's done a good job. And part of what makes it what makes the residents able to really afford is that the city does own that, so there isn't also tax on that as well. So to have a senior living place with a view of the river is nice, but if we can't sustain that, then we do have to look for a plan B. I think that Alder Darton has a lot of good points. Thank you.
thank you, Alder Morrow. And before I go to members of the council, I have a question, two questions. One, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Kronowski, but it's not just replacing doors, but these are going from 32-inch doors to 36-inch doors. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know what the existing door size is in there right now. I do know that a number of the doors would have to be replaced. The entry doors would have to be replaced to be 36-inch. The building itself is a concrete honeycomb structure, and so in order to expand a doorway, you're cutting into concrete in order to make that work. So that when you look at the price to install a new door, if you were to do just a regular fire separation entry door, yeah, $300 to hang a new door makes a lot of sense. But when you're trying to bring the property further into ADA compliance via 36-inch entry doors into each unit, and with the concrete honeycomb structure, among others, that's where you start getting into the bigger costs. So that's the first thing. We also did, staff did reach out to some folks that I think would be a good fit if we were to put it back out for bid to sell the property. One specific person who's very knowledgeable on tax credit deals and is doing a lot of work with the Berkshire project and now with the Convent project, had some really intimate knowledge about the building and had walked through the building a number of times with Michael Ostrowski when he was still with the city. And, you know, trusting this gentleman's judgment, he really said the building is not worth putting back out to bid for someone to purchase. Even if we were to sell the building for $1, the amount of money it would take to bring that property into compliance with today's ADA requirements, fix the facade, make it a more attractive place, just doesn't make financial sense for someone. We could explore doing that, but just knowing that the issues of the facade and of the renovations that are required of that building will still be there. So the city taking on that burden may be shifted to a developer or a new owner who then is going to pass along that money to, or that cost to the residents, which may make Edgewater no more affordable, especially if they don't pursue tax credit deals like other projects have in the city in the past. So there's a lot of moving parts here, but knowing that we have started to explore all these options, and we wanted to bring them to you tonight to get further direction.
Thank you. And you covered the other question I had. So it was about, do you think there'd be anybody who's done this kind of thing before interested in buying? And obviously you've had a conversation with someone. This is that conversation is not unlike the conversations we have. I chair the Portage County Healthcare Center Committee, and this conversation is not unlike that. It's a incredibly old building, and the repairs to even bring it up to code would be significant. Let's just put it that way. So I believe Alder Jennings had her hand up. So please go ahead, Alder Jennings.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. I appreciate how carefully Edgewater has been approached by both staff and Finance Committee. I hope that Finance will choose to transition to the closure of the building. It's not sustainable or wise for the city to maintain Edgewater, and it will cause financial harm to residents to do so. One of the best ways the city can support seniors is to build tax revenues that can be invested in seniors. And I don't want to talk about Edgewater in terms of real estate. However, it would be irresponsible to not address the realities of this. So anyway, in short, I hope the Finance Committee moves towards transition and closure. And I think staff, along with Finance Committee, has created a very humane pathway for the residents to resettle, and in a way that will be really beneficial to everybody. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Other members of the council who wish to speak? Alder Zarazua, I see you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I know this is such a hard thing, but just remembering, like, we're talking about people's lives, and that and I know you all know that, but when I'm hearing the words that are being used, I'm imagining what's going through Mary Meyer's head right now, as far as it being like, they can move, there's Berkshire. I mean, this is like their worst fears coming into realization. Like, they felt that when the Berkshire building went up, that was the first step in us saying, you're all going to have to move to the Berkshire building. And I mean, this rate is not affordable. I mean, like $140 minimum increase to live at the Berkshire is not, for anyone on a fixed income, that's not going to work. And throughout our community, I mean, it's just an ongoing problem that there's not enough affordable housing for people who are on fixed incomes. So I guess my concerns I would have is that we're going to tell people they need to move, and not, I'm glad that we're recognizing they might not have the financial resources to move, but they also might not have the ability to search for an apartment. I mean, there's a lot bigger piece to it than just saying, like, you have to get up and go. So is there any way that we can support them on a larger scale? Sorry, Director Karnowski, but if you can develop like landlords that are willing to work with people, or you know, and what those rents look like, trying to facilitate this a little more if this is the direction we go in. So thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the council? You're gonna have to speak up because, oh, I finally saw Alder Kneebone. Go ahead, Alder Kneebone. You're on mute. I still can't hear you.
How's that? No?
Your voice is coming through beautifully.
Okay. This is one of those things it's going to be a very, very, very hard decision. No matter what we do. Being on a fixed income myself, I'm concerned about being able to pay the increased assessment on our property taxes. But the reality is, we have an aging building that really isn't worth the resources, but we cannot let the residents hang out to dry. We've got to have a safety net in order to facilitate a humane transition. If the building can hang on a year or two, it gives people plenty of time to plan. Perhaps some of the affordable housing that's being proposed will be up and ready to go. But I mean, there are so many people like myself that are on the verge of being taxed out of our homes and taxed out of apartments, as city revenues with the pandemic and the economic situation are uncertain at best. We just don't know what's going to happen. I think we have to plan to transition away from that building. As hard a decision as that is to make, I think it's the only responsible one we can make. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Kneebone. Excuse me, I've got a tickle this evening. I'm so sorry. Other members of council who wish to comment? Trying to scan the boxes. Before we go with members of the public, I will express my opinion. I do not doubt the veracity of the proposal from 2018. I too build things for a living. I do landfills. Granted, I'm not building homes. And I've seen construction's costs continually escalate. Could it be tweaked a little bit here and there? Possibly. But that's the reality of where we are, unfortunately. And I agree with Alder Kneebone. This is a challenging situation. As I said, I chair the Healthcare Center Committee for the county, and we're facing a similar sort of situation. And the reality is we have to be prepared, and I have to prepare the community, and I have to prepare my committee. I have to prepare the staff at the healthcare center and the residents, which one of whom is my mother, for the fact that there may be an option that includes getting out of the business and having that facility go away. We have to be realistic enough to at least explore that option. And I've learned in my time there that that's where we are with this building as well. And one way or the other, the people here will be paying more money for housing. I think being able to offer alternatives that are more sustainable, in other words, a newer building close by. Yes, it's not right on the river. That was some of the complaints we heard the last time we had this, which do not ring true to me because nobody else has the option to live on the river. I think we have some options here, and I think I want to be able to provide the support and the options and ensure that the taxpayers of the city are not unduly burdened. And also that the seniors and those who are disabled have options as they move forward with their lives. So my tendency is towards stopping accepting new applicants and having this building go away and transitioning the residents to some alternatives that are suitable for their lifestyles. I do have a note here that Director Kronowski wants to bring something up, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think in this specific instance, I speak for Corey and I. We hate having these conversations internally. This is a really tough subject, and I think this is going to be the toughest decision the city is going to make for the next few years, is what to do with Edgewater Manor. The options moving forward, we've got to think about, is it responsible for the city to make the improvements to the building, pass those costs on to the residents, and make living at Edgewater no longer affordable? Or take in the existing money, the about $1 million or so, passing that back to the residents through an incentive, through a subsidy, however you want to discuss it. That's already money that they've paid into the system, where we would be providing it back to them to live at another location as we draw down residents at the Edgewater Manor. And that would apply to the existing residents. And I think that that's a really good alternative moving forward, a way that the city can shut Edgewater down over the next few years, get existing residents additional subsidy or incentive to relocate elsewhere, and get money that they've already paid into the system back out and towards their rent at a new location. Again, Corey and I do not take any pleasure in having these conversations. In fact, every time he comes into my office or I go into his and the words Edgewater comes out of one of our mouths, each one of us starts to get really frustrated, because it's a terrible situation that we're in, but it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. So that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. Nobody is going zippity-doo-dah, this is a wonderful day, we're having all kinds of fun here. That is not the case. And staff is really, again, the conversations I've had with staff, it's been, how can we best do this to cause the least harm? And that is very sincere on the part of staff. And I think it's very sincere on the part of everyone who's spoken so far. And now, Ms. Meyer, and then any other members of the public who wish to speak are certainly able to do so at this time. Again, if you could limit yourself, right now you're on mute, so you'll need to unmute yourself. And you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead. Speak up, please.
I ask you to please indulge me and allow me to have 5 minutes, because I don't think there are very many members of the community here to speak, and that 5 minutes is usually allowed in cases like that. I'd like to respond to some of the things I heard. I really appreciate all the support from those who really appreciate that Edgewater Manor is meeting a need, and that it could, and that future generations of seniors who need the kind of affordable housing that Edgewater Manor and only Edgewater Manor can provide. I just don't, I understand the push of some, and all along the push to do away with Edgewater, but it's just unnecessary. That Edgewater is, well, that bid was just not the kind of bid that should have gone out for Edgewater, because it contained all kinds of things that Edgewater doesn't need a bid for. It only needs a bid for an affordable facade solution. Edgewater is only 41 years old, and it has always been totally self-sufficient. So comments that have been going around for a few years now or more, that we can't keep pouring money into Edgewater, these are just the kinds of comments that fuel those who, and well-meaning, as I'm sure everybody is, those who believe that Edgewater can't continue to provide this very necessary service to the whole community. It can continue to pay for all of its needed repairs out of its rents, as it always has, except for a permanent facade solution. Edgewater doesn't need to be brought up to code. Edgewater doesn't need new doors. I don't know where that came from. The only thing we need a bid for, if a bid is needed, is for a permanent repair solution. Edgewater already exists, and as you can tell by the kinds of monies you're talking about, people having to pay more for housing, that does not meet the needs of the many, many poor and poor seniors and those who need affordable housing. Now I'll just read through this quickly. Please do whatever you, I really do appreciate those who had words, sympathetic words. And thank you for considering carefully, as you are, how the city might help Edgewater seniors be able to afford a home. Please first do whatever is necessary to keep Edgewater Manor affordable housing for seniors for future generations. I was going to say before what Mr. Konofsky said, Director Konofsky said, is that with as many people out of work due to COVID as there are, this might be a good time to find a long-term solution to Edgewater's facade solution, a solution that Edgewater could pay for with the $1.5 million loan that the council approved for Edgewater, so that Edgewater could pay the debt service without raising its rents. And any idea of taking out more loans and having it go to the seniors is just completely unfathomable to me, because the whole point of Edgewater is keeping it affordable, like it always has been and like it could continue to be. Please don't make any decision tonight about not keeping Edgewater affordable housing for seniors at the Zoom meeting. Last year, among the many reasons I gave the council for Edgewater's providing a necessary service to the whole community, I pointed to the fact that Berkshire is required to have only 5 units available for persons under 30% of the area median income, or AMI. And I told this body that many of Edgewater's residents are in that income level, and I told you about some of them. Today I found out that those 5 units, as Polly kind of talked about, are to go to disabled persons first, and only persons referred to Berkshire as disabled by the ADRC or the VA. And I understand that the demand for those 5 units by disabled persons will probably be high. So those are kind of out of reach for us. And I'm sincerely happy for the—
Ma'am, you're closing in on 5 minutes.
Oh, goodness sakes. Please indulge me. I'm sincerely happy for the disabled persons who will be given first preference, but as you've been hearing, the rent for the next tier up at Berkshire, the 42 units for persons under 50% of the AMI will be $685. For Section 8 voucher holders, that 685 over the payment standard for the Section 8 housing choice voucher is over the payment standard. Voucher holders cannot move into an apartment where they'd have to pay more than 40% of their income for renting utilities. So some voucher holders would not be able to move into Berkshire. For Edgewater seniors who aren't voucher holders, that 685 Berkshire rent is 145 more a month in rent than they pay at Edgewater in it. And at Berkshire, residents have to pay electric on top of that, whereas at Edgewater, the rent includes all utilities. For the many Edgewater seniors whose only income is Social Security, SSI, or some low income that puts them just over 20% of the AMI, Berkshire is not a good option. And Edgewater residents who need affordable housing, even though their income is under 60 or 80% of the AMI, they could pay $274 more a month and $688 more a month, respectively, at Berkshire, plus electric, than they're paying at Berkshire. If you're considering assisting Edgewater, my last paragraph here, if you consider assisting Edgewater residents with moving costs and somehow with rent, please bear in mind that the Portage County Housing Authority would not allow Section 8 voucher holders to receive a monthly subsidy from the city because they already receive a subsidy from the Housing Authority. But they could probably receive a lump sum, which if necessary, you could stipulate its use for. You should submit to the Housing Authority any assistance you're thinking of, and they will decide if it will be allowed. Thank you very much for letting me address you this evening.
You're welcome. You took just shy of 6 minutes.
Thank you.
Anyone else, members of the public? All right, bringing it back to the committee. How would you like us to proceed? We need to make a decision, as uncomfortable as all of this is. And it could be we bring it back to council next week with more information and a framework for whether it's a lump sum, whether it's a monthly support, what this looks like. Go ahead, Alder Slawinski.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I guess I'd like those questions answered that Ms. Myers had brought up regarding the, if we're even allowed to, as a city, to provide a subsidy. I guess I would like to have some of those questions explored. What are all of our options? So I guess I don't know if it's something where if we just kind of pass it to council with no recommendation.
The recommendation would be to bring it to council for decision next week.
Yeah, I guess no vote, I guess a specific vote on either option. I guess I will move to direct Director Kanowski to research the questions that, as far as what are options for subsidizing these residents at Berkshire or elsewhere. And then we will bring it up at council.
Okay, I'm assuming you also mean Comptroller Treasurer Laddick as well?
Yeah, oh, sorry, yeah, Corey too. All involved.
All involved, everybody's all in, as they say. All right, there is a motion on the floor to direct staff to bring some additional information, a framework for what this might look like.
I'll second.
Okay, and we have a second. Is there anything else that we need to discuss in preparation for council?
No, I mean, I think that some of these other issues, I'll echo what everybody's said, that this is tough. It's just not, it's an uncomfortable situation. It's one of those no great options situations, but I think it would be, we wouldn't be wise to assume that estimate is way out of line, and that estimate already is 2 years old.
Yeah.
We are working within a time frame that doesn't, tries to synchronize with the Berkshire, but doesn't make like a sudden move. This is intended to give time for people to figure things out. But yes, I agree with Alder Slawinski that the key question to be clarified is the relation to Section 8. Thanks.
Excellent. Director Konoski, you have something else yet?
Yeah, so just real quick on that, I think that's a really excellent point. And I can tell the committee that of all the residents in Edgewater, there's about 20 that receive some type of housing voucher. So it's not like a majority of the residents receive the housing voucher. It's a smaller percentage than what one might think. And so we can reach out to the Portage County Housing Authority and get some information from them as it relates to, if there were to be a subsidized or an assistance style program to those residents, what that would look like and how that could possibly impact their housing vouchers. So more than happy to do that, but just know that it's a roughly 20 residents, which makes up maybe 30% of the total residents within the Edgewater Manor who would be impacted by that. But.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have any addition to the motion?
Alder Dalton, some
go
other
ahead.
points of clarity.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing you, but I'll try to listen closely.
Sorry. Some other points of clarification. I'd like to have an understanding of what the availability of comparable units is in the county or area or city, so that we do have an understanding of what might happen to the 81 residents, and similarly what a plan for if we close the building might look like for that property. Do we intend to build a city hall there? Are we attempting to turn it to a tax generating property? And what priorities or uses are there? I know there were already some proposed in the drafted master plan for downtown. And I think those are important things to know, because it's one thing to close the building and we don't need another property sitting deteriorating.
Good point. Thank you. I do not see it being a city hall after COVID. I think we all know that our space needs have changed dramatically. Ms. Meyer, are you still on the line?
I don't know what happened. I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can't. Something happened to my.
Sure. I have a question for you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Have you made any attempt to make inquiries about your ability to live over at the Berkshire property?
Yes. I can see the handwriting on the wall. I pray for some miracle, but I believe that you're not going to continue to keep Edgewater long term. And it's been so hard for me and so hard on me because, like I say, the other residents, they can't really speak up. What I mean is seniors can't advocate for themselves. So I decided to move. And first I was going to move further away to my daughter, but I need to stay in the city for health reasons. So I am wanting to move to Berkshire. It just so happened that today was the day that Jen, the new property manager, called me, and I got some more information, found out some things that were helpful for tonight's meeting, and talked to Housing Authority. I'm a voucher holder. My income is $390, $330 a month. And so I'm one of those that I was hoping to move into one of those 30%, units, but now I found out they're for disabled. So I'm hoping to move over there and move into one for $685 and pay the difference out of my own pocket, which will be very hard, very hard.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I'm hoping we're able to provide some level of support if this comes to fruition. So thank you for your input and for standing in support of your neighbors.
You're welcome. The only reason I spoke tonight was because of the support, because here I'm back. I don't see, I see that it was a mistake not to let it get sold when it was up for sale, because I didn't understand. I was naive, and I didn't understand that a business that wants to be affordable housing, even though I see they probably would have raised the rent a little bit over the payment standard, that section. It would have been nothing like what they're doing over at Berkshire, but it made sense to me that it should stay in the city because I thought the city will keep it as affordable as it is. But now I understand that the city is a city and they've got all kinds of concerns. Whereas, you know, as opposed to when you've got the people that are running an affordable housing unit. So,
all right. Well, and thank you very much. All right, bringing it back to the committee, we have a motion on the floor. Barring any other conversation, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed would be no. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for the conversation, everyone. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Again, tickle. Consideration, item 4, consideration of change order number 1 to the AECOM agreement for changes in scope related to the Business 51 planning study in the amount of $28,986.00. This is another opportunity where I spent some time with Director Badoon and Director Konevsky. I'm trying to think, who did I talk with? It's been a busy couple of weeks sharing time with city staff. As some of you may or may not know, if you've been attending any of the Business 51 stakeholder meetings, so the citizen input meetings, there's clearly a change in how the citizens of Stevens Point, and great, I'm so grateful that AECOM is open to hearing and incorporating the words of the citizens who live along this corridor and use this corridor. And I say this because I live on Business 51. And that scope has really changed. They do not want to see houses taken down. They do not want to see the corridor widened. They want to see it be an efficient corridor to move traffic and for pedestrians to walk safely. And that's really changed the scope of their work from where they were, what was that, Director Badoon, 2015, 16, something like that.
Even farther than that, it was 12 and 13. I was.
Oh my gosh, long time ago.
Things
Galaxy far, far away. So their work has changed based on the wonderful citizens of this community and the input they're providing. And they're listening, and they need to be able to adapt to make this the kind of corridor that is truly of the people and reflective of our need for the future. Director Badoon, I don't know if you have anything else.
Just one other thing. Part of this otherwise is a direct request on my behalf related to potential STP urban, grant funding. The STP urban runs again next year.
Yeah.
And since we'll kind of be in the midst of everything that's going on, and having talked with Portage County Highway Commissioner Nathan Check, looking for kind of what may otherwise be proposed from the local units of government here, having a high probability that we'll be proposing once again, would be looking again for AECOM's assistance to make sure we put together the best possible application we can to try to secure some of that grant funding. So some of the hours related to it, really not part of the study, but as far as trying to help us get the funding to put this thing into motion.
Excellent. I forgot about that. Thank you very much. Director Kronowski, did you have anything else? You were part of the discussion.
No, nope. Nothing additional to add.
Thank you. Yeah, I've enjoyed listening in on these stakeholder meetings. The input has been wonderful. The questions are great. I've had one virtual constituent meeting with some questions and some discussion. And it's been a great experience. And again, I'm very grateful to AECOM for adapting to this new kind of concept, which I'm going to say this out loud, does not include bike lanes on Division Street. In fact, it is absent of that. And so AECOM needs to get busy. I would be happy to entertain questions from the committee or a motion on this change order. I'll get to you,
Alder Morrow, to approve the change order as outlined.
There is a motion to approve the change order. Is there a second?
Alder Dalton, I would second.
We have a second. Is there discussion? And I'll get to Alder Jennings in just a moment.
This is Alder Slowinski. Just one question for Director Badun regarding the how does this fall in line with our budget, and where is this additional funding coming from, or is it going to be absorbed within like a contingency within the budget?
I'll probably have Mr. Laddick respond a bit much to that, because part of it is we do have some of the funding from the jurisdictional transfer, understanding and talking with Corey in that regards. If you recall, the overall budget that we otherwise had here, and I'm going to probably slaughter the numbers and probably let Corey get into more of the details, is there was roughly $1 million therefore is for this project. The actual total project came in a little over that. The utilities is going to absorb some of that because it is actually related to utility work beneath the road, which gives us a little bit of leeway remaining in there to do that. So yes, I guess you would kind of call it within the contingency that we'd otherwise set up there, but I'll let Corey explain a little bit more detail to ensure you get the right answer.
Yeah, so it would be the jurisdictional transfer dollars that we still have left over from Business 51. That's where the money would be available to do this, especially with utilities paying, part of the cost for the design for their stuff. That allows, some money there to be able to fund this.
Good question. Does that answer your question, Alder Slowinski?
Yes. So you said there's about $1 million in there yet? Because I know there was a good portion of that went over to the grade separation. I can't remember what the numbers were as far as what's remaining.
Yeah, it would be more than $1 million. I would have to talk a little bit with Scott and with Joel as far as to see where exactly we are on design and how much is going to be spent for design yet. But there should be the money should be available to pay for this.
All right, yeah, if you could just maybe send me an email when you get all that information, I appreciate it.
Sure.
I would suggest that you send it to the entire council, so they have that information, particularly the rest of the Finance Committee. And I will remind the Finance Committee and all of council and those listening that I removed by amendment the $2.6 million for the purchase of properties along the Business 51 corridor, because previously the previous plan was to take down a number of houses, $2.6 million worth. And that is no longer in the budget. While there may be some acquisition of right-of-way, I think we'll be able to see the houses the grand houses that sit on the corner of Main and Division and Clark and Division and all along this corridor. Not that my house is grand, but those houses will remain and this neighborhood will remain intact, saving that project $2.6 million. So Alder Jennings had her hand up, and then I'll take other questions from members of the council.
Yeah, first I'd like to say that Amy can feel that she has done a stellar job facilitating the Business 51 public sessions, and I do acknowledge that the AECOM group today is very different than 2013, 2014. However, most of the engineering discussion to date has merely been a rehash of alternatives that AECOM presented in 2014. So it appears that a lot of time and expense for that time has been directed at this rehash rather than bringing forward new designs that work within the existing footprint of the roadway, which is the starting place I think we should have had. It was made clear by the stakeholder group, our Director of Community Development, and some on council that widening the road must be taken off the table. So I think some missteps or some repeats of missteps are still being taken because of discussions that talk about the 4-lane roadway and improving that. It's not possible to maintain an undivided 4-lane roadway and make it safer without widening it. So I think there's, I continue to have some concerns about this process, which I expressed many, many months ago before we started into this. And I will have comments on number 5 as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of council? Any members of the public? All right, we have a motion on the floor to approve the change order listed in item 4 in the amount of $28,986. Barring any other conversation, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed would be no. Motion carries. Item 5, consideration of change order number 2 to AECom agreement for the addition of visualizations related to the Business 51 planning study in the amount of $26,954. Yep, I said that right. Sorry, I just had to double check that number. Again, I'm a little bit guilty here. I'm the one who suggested this, and this is mostly based on my virtual constituent meeting that I had. I had constituents who said that they didn't understand the drawings, and it would really be nice to see some 3D renderings or some sort of visualization of what this corridor will look like as vehicles are traveling through it, whether it's a 3 to 4 or a 4 to 3 conversion. What will the sidewalks look like? What will the corridor look like? How will it function? And so that was a pretty strong input from my constituents that they wish to see. And this relates to that to a degree. And I will then let Director Badoon and Director Kronowski, if they have anything to add to that.
Really nothing others to add to that. Just want to otherwise get that after comments were made last month to at least get a price in front of everybody to see if that's what we wanted to spend the money on. Clearly there can be some a lot of value put in that, but of course the process itself, just to create the 3D models, to create the animations in itself, it's a lot of time consuming effort, and it's costly to otherwise just to get into the game, so to speak. So something we probably still wouldn't put in just a base scope until we knew we needed it. Since it was brought up, at least wanted to present that to you. If anyone has any interest to it, there are some things. In fact, there's a stakeholder group meeting later this week. As part of that,
yep.
The AECom has included a little snippet of a sample one. And if anyone is interested, just let me know and I can send you a copy of that. It's drafted at the moment, and you can see what one of these actually looks like. They are actually very, very cool. It's amazing what they can otherwise do, but of course it does come with a price.
Yep. Director Kronowski, anything?
I believe that if this is a great way to introduce the public to what Division Street could look like. It's a great public policy tool, something that we should definitely pursue, and I think it'll help address a lot of the concerns that residents that live adjacent to or utilize Division Street, the corridor itself. It'll answer a lot of their questions, and providing that visualization, I think, helps provide a scalable, just a way for them to look at it differently, as opposed to looking at it from the bird's eye view and seeing where the lines are and not fully understanding what that might look like. So very supportive of this as well.
And before I go to members of the committee, I'm not unaccustomed to this. We did this in our most recent landfill construction because our landfill falls too close to the Mountain Bay Trail, which is a state trail. And the DNR required us to do this to show what our landscaping plan would be and how we would block the screening and block the view from people using the trail of the terrible landfill, of course. And we did that. It was a very effective means of helping the DNR visualize our plan for making an aesthetic along that corridor. And most recently, the Friends of Emerson Park have used this strategy and we will be using this in our marketing and our capital campaign. Rettler Corporation has provided us a fly-through 3D rendering of what it would be like to be standing in Emerson Park as it's fully renovated. And we think that it'll be very effective in our capital campaign. So I've seen it work very effectively. And when it was recommended to me by a constituent, I thought, bring it forward. So I'm happy to entertain questions from the committee, and I see Alder Shore's hand up.
Thank you, Chair. We're going from one fraught topic to the next, and I think that's relevant, right? We're talking about an issue with a history of being controversial, of kind of arousing a lot of rancor, and it sounds like what's being proposed here is an investment in, in a more constructive discussion, and a better understanding of the options, and hopefully, the kind of community discussion that generates more light than heat. Broadly related to Business 51, the reference before to getting highway DOT grants is crucial. Among the things that probably keep anyone on this council up at night is, what if we had to pay for some of these most expensive infrastructure projects in the whole community. So obviously that's important, and I know that speaks more to the previous item. And just one last quick point, I'll definitely kind of, in terms of the overall picture here, associate myself with the view that in general, I'm not a fan of widening streets, and I will be incredibly skeptical of widening here if that emerges, though maybe it won't. So that's enough, probably. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Other members of the committee?
This is Alder Selinsky. I just have a question.
Sure.
To the director, as far as what does our existing contract offer provide? Is it just plan and profile and that's it? And we don't have any sort of other type of, I guess, models or displays that they're going to provide us? I know back in 2012 they created, they were, obviously they weren't very detailed, but somewhat simulated, what it would look like. I pause a little on this. I mean, this is $27,000. Every dollar is valuable here, and I'm a little hesitant. I mean, I get I respect the reasoning, the intent here, but again, just a little concerned here. So I guess, is there anything, if this would not pass, what are they providing us for models, I guess?
That's a very good question. What we otherwise have right now would be, very similar to what we've seen so far presented with the initial stakeholders and public involvement related to the typical sections. So a big part of it is, what's available for that, the street mix views and such, as well as then as we move into the next, round of public involvement is going to be getting into those plan views. So now we're going to start to seeing the aerial with the lines drawn on it. And it's really just kind of using those two to try to get a visualization for what, the roadway will look at, together. So you've got a cross section and you've got a plan view, but you've got to be able to put those two together to see how it works. And of course, typicals, change throughout sections as you're moving. Typicals are just that. They're typical, but they don't account for everything. And, but those are the two things that we're otherwise looking to scope here. This, of course, is going to get us not the entire corridor, because that gets very expensive, but, significant portions of each section of the corridor as a moving 3D model to see what it might look like and how things might otherwise transition between there, how the automobiles and pedestrians might interact and of course cross streets and whatnot, and how those things work together. So even within what we'd be doing as far as things before, even if they were proposing more, it would still just be very static. This brings it to be something that's very dynamic, and even within there we can look at different perspectives, and if we want to know what someone might be, how does this view look like from someone walking on the sidewalk? We can get a perspective of that. How does it look like if I was going to cross the road here? What would I actually see? That, things that we probably wouldn't be able to get regardless of, any of those typical sections or plan view profiles we have, would be available to us, with it. So hopefully that answers your question on what it is. So typical sections, plan view drawings versus what we have are proposing here, which would be an actual animated 3D model.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure it answered your question. Any other questions from members of the committee? Okay, waiting my 5 seconds. And Alder Jennings had requested to speak to this one as well. Go ahead, Alder Jennings.
Thank you, President Johnson.
You're
I
welcome.
actually think visualizations are extremely important. I was the one doing videos 5 or 6 years ago related to roadways, and they were actually working quite well until certain people decided to politicize our streets. Sort of echoing what I said before, I expected this kind of work from the beginning. Knowing what went wrong last time, this should already be there. We shouldn't have to be doing a change order for this. I can tell you that in this community that people who do not believe that a 4 to 3 lane conversion will work will not be convinced by any kind of visualization that you come up with. This is about sociology and psychology, not engineering, and I continue to see a failure for staff and AECOM to approach this or aspects of this issue from those cultural points of view. It seems to, the argument seems to be, oh, if we create this rational picture, everybody will come on board. You've not seen that, and you're not going to see that. So again, I guess I'm frustrated, and I think this should have already been done, and it's not worth, why are we having to pay $27,000 more for this? So thank you.
Fair enough. I guess I'm always of the opinion if we can pull 1 or 2 along, that's a good thing. So other members of the council who wish to comment?
I have a comment.
Oh, certainly, Alder Morrow.
This is a question for Corey. Do we have money for this? Or where is the money going to come from?
Yeah, so it would come from the jurisdictional transfer dollars that we have set aside for the Business 51 project.
And there is money in there for this that we could use for this.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Yeah, it could be used for this, or I mean, the project itself will also be quite expensive. So obviously there will be a huge need there. But yes, it is available whether you choose to spend it on this or spend it on any of the other needs for that corridor.
I have a question for Scott. Like, as the process would go over, as there's going to be change orders, because there always are, would the rendition that we get be updated with the change orders so that the people can see what the change is going to actually look like, whatever those are?
What we're otherwise getting in this particular scope is going to have the 3 segments. So the corridor itself divided into 3 segments, as we're calling them, sort of south, central, and north. And then what we'll do is once you create the models, it'll be a half-mile stretch within each. And then once you create the model, which is really the bulk of the cost here, what we're asking for are two alternatives. So once you create the models and stuff, creating those, so we can kind of choose what we want to otherwise show there. So yes, we are looking for a second alternative as part of what we're asking for now as a base team. So we have another option. So if we look at something and we say, gosh, all right, that's good, but what would it look like if we chose to go this route instead? Whatever it is, it would be included in there. So I wanted to make sure we had alternatives for every segment. Then there, honestly, I don't know what will happen in the central, but we've got 6 alternatives over 3 segments, however we wish to put them together. And then from that, also from those models, we have up to 8 renderings. So we can kind of basically call them snapshots, from anywhere within their perspectives to get there to also use for visualization as well.
Okay.
All right, we have an agenda item. How do we wish to proceed?
I'll move approval.
Alder Dawn, I'll second.
And we have a motion and a second on the floor for, I've been talking too long, sorry. Item 5, which is a change order in the amount of $26,954. Barring any other conversation, again, good conversation, I appreciate the input. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed would be no.
No.
Thank you, Alder Slawinski. We have 4 ayes and 1 no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 6, early payoff of notes 2013C and 2013D. Corey, do your magic.
Okay, so this item is before you. These are 2 notes. Basically, they're borrowings that we did back in 2013, and they're associated with TIF District 9. And when we borrow money, it's a little bit different than when you get a personal loan from a bank where you can pay it back at any time. Typically, you're going to set very specific terms and conditions as far as when you're able to pay off that loan early. So we can't just pay, something off whenever we feel like it. With this one, these notes do become callable on December 1st of this year. And the TIF district, it'd be TIF District 9, does have sufficient money to pay this debt off and extinguish the debt. And typically, if we're going to be looking at, making a decision about an early payoff, we'll look at what the interest rates are. And in this case, you have interest rates that range from 2.2 to 3.5%. Right now, we are seeing borrowing rates that are lower than that. Also, if we take out a new deposit, that's also going to be quite a bit lower than that as well. So it makes sense that since we have the cash, to use that cash to pay off these loans early. Your total interest savings would be $59,920. And then the other thing that I would note is that the payment that we're paying off early would otherwise be due 2021 through 2023. So getting rid of those payments now, even though we would be really drawing down the funds of TIF District 9, you're seeing an almost immediate impact as far as extinguishing debt payments that would be coming due fairly soon anyway.
This is Alder Slawinski.
Go ahead, please.
I would definitely move to approve the call of the early payoffs of notes 2013C and 2013D. And I guess if there's a second, I have a comment.
Certainly. Is there a second?
I second.
There is a second by Alder Morrow. Go ahead, Alder Slawinski.
No, I think this is, whenever we can, pay notes off early and with Corey being comfortable with, that amount of money being, taken out of that TIF district. I guess in my mind, it's, we're saving nearly $60,000 in interest. So in my mind, it's a no-brainer, and I would encourage the committee to approve this. Thank you.
And I agree with you, Alder Slawinski. Are there any other comments? Any comments from members of the council? Members of the public? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed would be no. Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda, additional funding for Plover River Crossing property acquisition. A little bit of a kerfuffle, I guess, is a good way to put it, or a failure to accurately identify property owners on the county's tax rolls. So Director Kramer, did you want to start by filling in everyone?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. This item is here this evening as kind of as an overview of a mistake that we caught in the mapping system as we went further into the appraisal and now into the negotiation process for a couple private property parcels that are located in the preferred route of the Plover River Crossing. To date, quite a bit of work has been done with the two property owners that we had identified, and we are in the point of the process where we've done the title search and worked through the covenants. So one item that we discovered since the last time this was discussed at committee level is some of the covenants within the actual subdivision do get into things like subdivision of lots, and we've discovered that the lots that are not, there's one that's a full parcel acquisition. The other one would now need to be an easement, is what we've discovered. That process led us to be informed by our negotiator and our appraisal company that the DOT TAP grant process would require a legal description and an actual appraisal easement, or an easement appraisal, I should say. So the city surveyor worked with my department and with Director Badoon, and we were checking into the actual meets and bounds legal description. While we did that process, Pat was able to discover that there was an inaccuracy on the Portage County GIS mapping system, which labeled a property as public access, which was actually privately owned. When we learned of that, we immediately got a call together with several members from the Plover River Crossing Committee and started talking through our options. The memo outlines the costs that the city has already incurred and been working through. And we believe our first route forward was to make contact with the new identified property owner and proceed accordingly with the preferred route. That contact has been made graciously. One of the partners of the committee, and I believe Steve Menzel's on the call, has made contact. And at this point, we have just had some initial discussions, and there'll be another one upcoming. The memo is asking for authorization of funding to proceed with another appraisal for an easement and a negotiation should the property owner agree to go through that process. If it was not agreed to, then we would not spend those dollars. However, because of timeline and how far we are in this process, we believe this made the most sense as a path forward. If we would get a yes answer in the follow-up conversations, which will happen later this week and into the next couple of weeks, we would be following the same process we've been doing. If the answer would be no, then we would be looking at other alternatives and other connection routes based on some of the alternative route or the new alignment we know now that this parcel has been identified. Lastly, just so everyone's aware of how it sets up, as we've done the negotiation piece of it and gotten into the title search piece of it, we have now worked with the Register of Deeds, and the mapping system will be corrected. So then we can give a full visualization of what this route would be and what the connections would be as well. Lastly, in the memo with the $15,000 request, there's a large contingency dollar amount, $7,500. Should all three property owners seek a second appraisal, that would be part of the DOT requirement for the TAP grant should they ask. We right now don't have any indication one way or the other, but rather than coming back in another month, if this continues to move forward and showing that account, this would have allowance to be able to pay for that second appraisal, which is a requirement should that move forward. If they do not request those, we would not move forward with that or spend those dollars.
All right. Thank you, Director Kramer. And typically I wouldn't go to members of the public, but I believe Mr. Menzel, you've had some conversations with the property owner. And I guess I'd like you to, if you could fill in the committee, please.
Sure, I've actually had one conversation as a follow-up to a letter that I sent, and the property owner had a couple of questions and indicated that she would think about it, and definitely did not say no to considering an easement through the property. The trail would go across the back end of her property that is down in the prairie and wetland area. They have a rather large large lot, and so she has the maps of her property showing where the route of the trail would go, and then also just an explanation of what we're wanting to do. And I was encouraged that she did not flat out say no in the first conversation, because I did not know this person and she didn't know me. So what we agreed to do is I would call her later in the week to follow up on her thinking, and she hadn't had a chance to read the letter, look at the map real thoroughly yet. So that's what I'm hoping to do later in the week.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you wish to add?
No, I just think we've what we have been able to do so far with these landowners has actually been amazing to me, because we've got two adjacent landowners that have agreed to an appraisal and an offer to buy an easement and to purchase a parcel, and and that was the biggest cog in getting this done. This this other property owner, the route that would go through their land would be ideal. It's not necessarily the only way we could go, but it would be ideal if we could. And so it's still an incredible opportunity, because we had these two landowners that were willing to look at this. So I think if you would have asked us 7 or 8 months ago if this was even a possibility, I think everybody on the planning team would have said no way. So it's still pretty exciting. We just got a little bump in the road.
There's always bumps in the road, aren't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So a little bit of a hiccup, some inaccuracy and detailing on the mapping that the county had. I imagine that's not the first or the last. Questions from the committee? Questions from members of council? Members of the public? Bringing it back to members of the committee for a motion.
Alder Dalton, I would move approval of the additional funds for the Clover River Crossing property acquisition.
Thank you, Alder Dalton. There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Alder Morrow, second.
And we have Alder Morrow with a second. Any discussion?
This is Alder Slowinski.
Yes, Alder Slowinski.
Again, you know, I hate to continue to, I guess, I just feel bad. I support this project. I think it's a great project, but from day one, I've been saying that we need support. We need a collaborative effort from the community. And this is a community project, and the city of Stevens Point taxpayers should not be taking this on their own. And we continue to get deeper into the weeds on this thing and continue to invest more taxpayer dollars on this project. But yet I have not heard yet from this planning committee, from any of the alders that are pushing for this. I have not seen any efforts on any kind of collaboration with the community. And I just don't understand this. And we continue to go deeper and deeper into it. And eventually we're just going to be invested in, the taxpayers of the city are going to be invested in it, and other communities and other entities of this community are just going to say, well, they're already going to do it. So, you know, what if we don't get this TAP grant? How are we going to pay for this? I don't know why there's not been any. I see a lot of letters of support from different entities within the community, but nobody is stepping up to the plate and saying, hey, financially we will commit to help. So again, I hate not supporting this stuff because I think it is a great community project. But again, as an alderman of the city, representing the taxpayers of the 6th district, I cannot continue to support just recklessly spending this money without any type of vision on how we're going to put this together as a community. So thank you.
You are very welcome, and I certainly understand your concern. I'm finding as treasurer for the Friends of Emerson Park, I wear a lot of different hats. So you'll hear me referencing a lot of different roles that I have. Pulling together a capital campaign is a long process. And this process, I believe, for the group is beginning. And as I know for the Friends of Emerson Park, we've spent the last 1.5 years planning for our capital campaign, which we will launch, I believe, next week. So I'm assuming the same sort of long process is ahead of the folks building the capital campaign on the Clover River Trail crossing. Again, it's my assumption, having been involved in a number of capital campaigns, and I'd be happy to hear from either Mr. Menzel or Alder Jennings who have been involved. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Menzel.
I can understand Alder Slawinski's thoughts on that, and I think the assumption is that we would have a capital campaign, and in fact, of the people who, or the organizations and people who've submitted letters of support, we have had one that actually we did not ask for it, but we had one that told us that if and when we do move ahead with this, that they would welcome a proposal from us. So, and nice. we didn't ask for it, that was invited. So I know what you're saying, Alderman Slawinski, and I agree, and I think that's part of the plan, is that we would do fundraising for this.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any other conversation? Oh, Alder Shore, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, President Johnson. So I think what we're really discussing here is at what point in the process is it fair to expect that other local government entities would step up? And from everything I understand, just to echo what's already been said, absolutely those discussions have been taking place, but they haven't secured commitments. And I think the idea here is that with some time sensitivities here at the steps of the process that are being gone through right now, and you know, that makes it difficult, puts us in a spot in terms of not having time to get those commitments. So if that helps, thanks.
Thank you very much, Alder Shore. I see Director Kramer has his hand up.
The only thing I would add just as a conversation piece is that the route really sets a lot of things in place. So in terms of once the route is finalized and we know that can happen, things like a design and the estimating can be solidified much closer, which will set up a lot of the things the capital campaign will also need. So just this is a reference, because it was a really large idea originally, there was a lot of assumptions that had to be made. It's narrowing closer and closer. And this, once the route is nailed down and this is where it can go, that should set up a lot of these future conversations and a more solid plan for the committee to basically align that and say, okay, now we know that we're designing to this route. Here's now the estimation based on what we're dealing with for wetland and things of that nature. So I just wanted to reference that before the vote happens.
And thank you very much. and I've said this before, this is about connecting, right? We have a group of taxpayers on the east side of Stevens Point, beautiful area of our community, completely cut off from the rest of the community and from our most valuable asset, the green circle. And this provides that connectivity, very much like the much desired grade separation on Hoover, which I'm not entirely in support of, but connectivity is how we create community. And this will be the long haul. We're just starting, but Stevens Point is the leader. We are the leader of Portage County, right? And so we'll lead the way. And as we lead the way, we'll have our partners, municipalities, businesses, individuals coming along with us. And I just see us getting better and better. And this is just one of those things that is a pinnacle of our ability to be fantastic. So that's just my perspective after a long evening of talking way too much. So any other questions or comments? All right, there is a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Alder Morrow, did I hear you?
That was Dalton.
I heard Dalton. Oh, there we go. I heard Dalton. I did not hear Morrow. Anyone opposed? No.
No.
We have 4 ayes and 1 no. Motion carries. And oops, sorry, I got to get back to my agenda. Too many screens. Item 8 is accept and place on file letter of support from the Clover River Crossing from the Audubon Society. Very nice letter. I am sure you all saw it. Thank you very much for that letter of support. And we will place that letter on file with the many others in support of this great community project connecting the amazing District 7 to the rest of the community. All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of the claims paid. I would be happy to entertain a motion on that. Or not.
Alder Dalton out. Motion to approve the claims paid.
Thank you, Alder Dalton. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? And there's a second by Shore. Any questions about the claims paid? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed would be no. Motion carries. And ladies and gentlemen, that exhausts our agenda. And we are adjourned at 8:35. Thank you, everyone, for sticking through this great conversation.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.